The first time I saw humans in combat training, I thought we had made a terrible error, bringing them into the Galactic Coalition Academy. My name is Threnko, and I have served as a tactical instructor for 43 cycles. I have trained warriors from over 200 species. I have seen the mighty Cromath wrestle gravitational anomalies with their bare hands. I have watched the ethereal Vossesnai manipulate matter at the molecular level. I have even survived teaching the notoriously violent Drikthor how to use weapons that would not immediately explode in their faces. But humans? Oh, by the 17 moons of Gultrax, humans were something else entirely. The incident occurred during my intermediate combat theory class, a course designed to teach species from various worlds how to cooperate in military operations. The classroom held approximately 60 students that morning, representing 12 different species. Among them were 2 humans, both from the third planet of the Sol system, a backwater world that had only recently qualified for coalition membership. The male human was called Marcus Webb, tall for his species, maybe 1.8 meters, with dark skin and darker eyes that seemed to constantly evaluate everything around him. He carried himself with the loose confidence of someone who had never truly been challenged. The female was Kira Vasquez, shorter, perhaps 1.6 meters, with bronze skin and hair so black it seemed to absorb light. She rarely spoke during lectures, but when she did, her observations were disturbingly accurate. Too accurate for someone supposedly new to galactic warfare. I should have seen the warning signs. The day's lesson focused on asymmetric warfare tactics. I was explaining how smaller forces could leverage environmental advantages against numerically superior opponents, when Marcus decided to share his opinion with the entire class. "This is ridiculous," he announced, leaning back in his seat with his arms crossed. "No offense, Professor, but these tactics might work against most species here, but they would fail spectacularly against humans." The classroom fell silent. Several students turned to stare at him. A Philoronan named Vex's Shoal, her feline features twisted in amusement, let out a chittering laugh. Even Bront, a usually stoic megalith, whose species communicated primarily through vibrations, seemed to rumble with what I interpreted as skepticism. I raised one of my 3 manipulator appendages. "Please, Marcus Webb, enlighten us. What makes your species so uniquely resistant to proven tactical principles that have succeeded for millennia?" He grinned. "Oh, how I have come to recognize that particular expression. Humans grin when they are happy, yes, but they also grin when they are about to do something monumentally stupid. Humans don't give up," he said simply. "You can have every advantage, every tactical edge, but we just keep coming. We are endurance predators, Professor. We don't run fast or hit hard initially, but we never ever stop. Your asymmetric tactics assume a rational enemy who will retreat when odds are unfavorable. Humans are not rational in that way." Vexishal laughed again, louder this time. "The soft skin thinks his species is special. How adorable." Other students joined in the amusement. The Cromath pair in the back row was slapping their massive hands together in what passed for laughter among their kind. Even some of the more disciplined students were having difficulty maintaining their composure. I should have ended it there. I should have redirected the discussion back to the curriculum. But I confess, I was curious to see where this would lead. Perhaps a demonstration would be educational, I suggested, knowing full well I was making a mistake. "Marcus Webb, would you care to prove your hypothesis in a practical exercise?" His grin widened. "Absolutely. Excellent. And who among your classmates would you like to face in this demonstration?" I expected him to choose one of the smaller, less physically intimidating species. The Vosenai, perhaps, or one of the fragile Whisperkin who relied entirely on technology for combat capability. Instead, Marcus turned his gaze directly toward Kira Vasquez and said, "Her." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kira, who had been quietly taking notes on her datapad, slowly raised her head. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes shifted. I have seen that look before, in the eyes of apex predators moments before they strike. "You sure about that?" she asked, her voice perfectly calm. "Why not?" Marcus replied, his confidence apparently unshaken. "You have been awfully quiet. Let us show everyone what humans can do." "Marcus," she said, and there was a note of warning in her voice that should have penetrated even his apparently dense skull. "I really don't think that is a good idea." "Scared?" he challenged. "Oh, you absolute fool. I remember thinking, you magnificent, suicidal fool." Kira closed her datapad with a soft click. "Okay then," she said quietly. "If you insist." The other students were practically vibrating with anticipation now. Nothing livens up a theoretical warfare class, quite like watching two students potentially injure each other in the name of education. I led the entire class to Training Arena 4, a medium-sized facility equipped with environmental shields, medical drones, and enough safety equipment to protect students from most forms of serious harm. Most forms. Not all. The rules were simple. 2 combatants enter the arena equipped with non-lethal training weapons and basic armor. The match ends when one participant is incapacitated, surrenders, or is forced outside the boundary ring. All species-specific advantages are permitted except for those that would cause permanent damage. Marcus selected a standard kinetic pulse rifle and light tactical armor. Practical choices for someone planning to use range and mobility. Kira took longer to equip herself. She chose a close combat loadout, heavier armor around her torso and arms, and a pair of shock batons designed for species with enhanced reaction times. Interesting choices for a human, whose species is not known for exceptional speed. "You sure you don't want a ranged weapon?" Marcus called across the arena. "I would hate for this to be too easy." Kira just smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Begin," I announced. Marcus immediately moved to establish distance, circling around the arena's perimeter, while keeping his rifle trained on Kira's position. Smart tactics, really. Maintain range, use superior firepower, control the engagement. Kira did not move. She just stood in the center of the arena, shock batons held loosely at her sides, watching Marcus circle her like a moon orbiting a planet. "What's wrong?" Marcus taunted. "Waiting for me to get bored?" "No," Kira replied. "Waiting for you to make your first mistake." Marcus fired. The pulse shot was well aimed, targeting Kira's center mass, exactly where academy training dictates you should fire when facing an opponent. The shot should have stunned her, ended the match in seconds. Kira moved. "I have watched thousands of training matches. I have seen species that can react to stimuli in microseconds. I have witnessed the Vorsnai phase through solid matter to avoid attacks, but I had never seen a human move quite like that." Kira did not dodge so much as she seemed to predict the shot's trajectory before Marcus even pulled the trigger. She twisted her body at an angle that should have been physiologically impossible, letting the pulse pass harmlessly through the space where her torso had been a fraction of a second earlier. Marcus fired again. Then again. Kira avoided each shot with minimal movement, never wasting energy on dramatic dodges, always shifting just enough to make the pulse miss by centimeters. "Hold still," Marcus shouted, frustration creeping into his voice. "Why would I do that?" Kira called back, and I swear there was laughter in her tone. The other students were leaning forward now, their earlier amusement replaced by fascination. Vex's shell's tail was twitching in the way Fellerons exhibit when they witness something that confuses their predatory instincts. Marcus changed tactics. He stopped firing individual shots, and instead laid down suppressive fire, sweeping his rifle in wide arcs to deny Kira any safe zones. Clever, but ultimately futile. Kira did not run away from the suppressive fire. She ran toward it, using the pulse patterns to predict safe corridors of movement. She zigged when she should have zagged, rolled when she should have jumped, moved through the deadly light show like she was dancing to music only she could hear. And then she was inside Marcus's effective range. "Oh no," I heard Marcus whisper. "Oh yes," Kira replied. What happened next was, professionally speaking, a masterclass in close-quarters combat. Personally speaking, it was absolutely brutal. Kira closed the distance in 3 strides. Marcus tried to bring his rifle to bear, but she was already inside his guard, one shock baton sweeping up to knock the weapon aside while the other jabbed toward his ribs. Marcus stumbled backward. Credit to him, he managed to avoid the first strike. He even managed to swing the rifle stock at Kira's head, a decent improvised counterattack. Kira ducked under the swing, planted her back foot, and drove her shoulder into Marcus's chest with enough force to lift him off his feet. He landed hard, armor absorbing most of the impact, but clearly having the wind knocked from his lungs. "Stay down," Kira advised, her voice still perfectly calm. Marcus, demonstrating either admirable courage or catastrophic stupidity, did not stay down. He rolled to his feet, drawing a combat knife from his belt as he rose. Kira sighed. Actually sighed like a teacher disappointed with a particularly slow student. "Marcus, seriously, just yield." "Never," he gasped, launching himself forward with the knife extended. Kira stepped into his attack, caught his wrist with one hand, twisted her entire body, and used his own momentum to send him flying across the arena. He hit the ground, rolled, and this time did not get up quite as quickly. "Last chance," Kira said, walking slowly toward him. "Yield now, and we can both pretend this never happened." Marcus looked up at her, and I saw the exact moment when his pride overrode his common sense. He grabbed a handful of arena sand and threw it at her face while simultaneously lunging forward with the knife. It was a dirty trick, the kind of tactic that might work against an opponent who expected fair play. Kira was not that opponent. She closed her eyes before the sand reached them, dropped one shock baton, and caught Marcus's knife hand with both of hers. Then she twisted, stepped through, and executed a throw that I recognized from human martial arts documentation as a hip toss. Marcus went airborne for the second time. This time Kira followed him down, landing with one knee planted firmly on his chest, and both shock batons positioned at either side of his neck. "Yield," she said, and it was not a request. Marcus, to his credit, finally recognized when he was beaten. "I yield," he wheezed. The arena fell silent. Kira stood, offered her hand to help Marcus up, and somehow that gesture was more humiliating than anything else that had happened. "Congratulations," she said, as she pulled him to his feet. "You just learned an important lesson about making assumptions." The other students erupted into noise. Some were cheering, others arguing about what they had just witnessed. Vex's shawl looked like her entire understanding of the universe had been challenged. I simply stood there, recalculating everything I thought I knew about humans. Marcus limped out of the arena, his pride significantly more damaged than his body. Kira walked over to where I stood. "Sorry about that, Professor," she said. "I tried to warn him." "Indeed you did," I replied. "Might I inquire where you learned to fight like that?" Her expression became carefully neutral. "Just picked things up here and there." "Here and there," I repeated slowly. "You move like someone with military training, extensive military training." "Do I?" she asked innocently. "Must be natural talent." I did not believe her for a second, but I let it pass. Instead I turned to address the class, who had returned to the classroom still buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. "Today's lesson," I announced, "was about the dangers of underestimating your opponent." Marcus Webb made several critical errors. First, he assumed superiority based solely on species reputation. Second, he engaged an opponent he knew nothing about. Third, and most importantly, he ignored multiple warnings that he was making a mistake. I paused, letting that sink in. In actual combat, these errors would have resulted in death. Here they resulted only in embarrassment and a few bruises. Consider yourselves fortunate to learn such lessons in a controlled environment. The students settled into their seats, and I continued with the scheduled curriculum. But I noticed several of them casting nervous glances at Kira, who had returned to taking notes as if nothing unusual had happened. After class ended, I approached Marcus, who was gathering his materials with considerably less swagger than he had displayed earlier. "Marcus Webb," I said, "a word if you would permit." He looked up, wincing slightly from what I assumed were bruised ribs. "Yes, Professor. I admire your courage, truly, but courage without wisdom is simply suicide with style." He nodded slowly. "Learned that today. Good. Now let me ask you something. Do you know what Kira Vasquez's file says about her background? She is from Earth's southern continent, I think. Why? Her file is remarkably sparse, I said carefully. Usually Academy applicants have extensive documentation, educational records, family history, previous occupational experience. Kira's file contains the bare minimum required for admission and nothing more. Marcus frowned. What are you saying? I am saying that perhaps you should get to know your fellow human a bit better. And perhaps, next time, you should listen when someone tries to warn you. He looked across the room to where Kira was exiting through the far door. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe I should. As they both left, I sat alone in my classroom, contemplating the implications of what I had witnessed. Humans had been part of the coalition for less than 4 cycles, yet here was one who fought with the precision of a seasoned warrior. It made me wonder what else we did not know about humanity. And more importantly, it made me wonder whether we should be afraid of what we might discover. Little did I know, that question would be answered far sooner than I expected, and in ways that would terrify the entire coalition. But that is a story for another time. For now, I had papers to grade and a training report to file explaining why one of my students had challenged another to single combat and gotten thoroughly humiliated. Just another normal day at the Galactic Coalition Academy. Or so I thought. 3 days after the incident, everything went to hell. Well, not literally to hell, though I imagine actual hell would have been marginally less terrifying than what we experienced. Let me explain. The Academy was hosting its annual Coalition War Games, a week-long exercise where student teams competed in simulated combat scenarios. Think of it as a combination of tactical training, team building, and showing off for potential military recruiters. Every species takes it seriously because performance during the games often determines your first assignment after graduation. I was assigned as an observer for Arena Complex 7, monitoring a Capture the Beacon scenario involving 6 teams of 8 students each. Standard stuff really. Navigate hostile terrain, acquire the objective, return to base while other teams try to stop you. Marcus and Kira were on different teams. Thank the stars. After their previous encounter, I had specifically requested they be separated to avoid further incidents. Marcus was assigned to Team Epsilon, alongside Vexid Shal and 6 other students representing various species. Kira was placed in Team Delta with Bront the Megalith, and a mix of other capable fighters. The scenario began normally enough. Teams deployed into the simulation zone, a 50-square-kilometer area of varied terrain complete with forests, mountains, urban structures and even a simulated river system. The beacon was hidden somewhere in the central zone, and teams had 6 hours to locate and secure it. I was reviewing tactical displays in the observation tower when the alarm started screaming. Not the normal exercise alarms, mind you. These were the emergency containment protocols, the ones that only activate when something has gone catastrophically wrong. What is happening? I demanded, rushing to the primary console where Instructor Velamorth was frantically manipulating holographic displays. Containment breach in Sector 9, she shouted, her usually calm demeanor completely shattered. Something got into the simulation zone. Something? What kind of something? Scanning now. Oh no, oh no no no. I did not like the sound of that. Velamorth. Report. Raxian Hunters, she whispered. 3 of them. They must have escaped from the xenobiology research facility next door. My blood, such as it is, turned cold. Raxian Hunters are not animals you want to encounter under the best of circumstances. Standing 3 meters tall with razor-sharp claws, armored hide that can deflect small arms fire, and a hunting instinct that makes them virtually unstoppable once they lock onto prey. They are the apex predators of their homeworld. The only reason we keep them for study is because understanding them helps us fight them when they inevitably show up on contested worlds. And now 3 of them were loose in an arena full of students armed only with non-lethal training weapons. Evacuate the zone immediately, I ordered. Get those students out of there right now. We are trying, Velamorth yelled back. But the hunters are between most teams and the extraction points. If we send shuttles in, the noise will attract them and we will just be serving up targets. I watched the tactical display in horror as 3 red signatures moved through the simulation zone at terrifying speed. Student teams were showing up as blue markers, most of them completely unaware of the danger stalking them. Then I noticed something odd. 2 of the hunters were moving together in a standard pack formation, heading toward the largest concentration of students, but the third had split off and was moving in a different direction, toward... "Someone zoom in on this sector," I commanded, pointing at the display. The image expanded, showing Team Delta's position. They had found the beacon and were beginning their extraction when the hunter's signature appeared on their sensors. "Get them out of there," I shouted. "We are trying to contact them, but communications are being jammed by something," Velmoth replied. "We cannot warn them." I watched helplessly as the hunter closed in on Team Delta's position. The students were moving slowly, tactically completely unaware that something was about to kill them all. Then the hunter attacked. Through the observation cameras, I saw it burst from the tree line like a nightmare made flesh. Its roar shook the entire forest, a sound designed by evolution to paralyze prey with fear. It worked. Most of Team Delta froze in terror. Most, but not all. Kira Vasquez did not freeze. She dropped the beacon, shouted something to her teammates, and charged directly at the hunter, with a training rifle that could not possibly hurt it. "What is she doing?" Velmoth gasped. "Something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," I replied. "Possibly both." The hunter saw Kira running toward it and did what hunters always do. It accepted the challenge and charged back. They met in the middle with a collision that should have ended with Kira being torn apart. Instead, she slid under the hunter's initial claw swipe, came up on its left side, and fired her training rifle directly into its eye. Now, training rifles are designed not to cause permanent damage. They fire low-velocity rounds that deliver an electrical shock, enough to stun most species but nowhere near lethal, but a direct hit to the eye. That is a different story entirely. The hunter roared in pain and fury, swinging blindly. Kira was already gone, rolling away and shouting orders to her still frozen teammates. "Bront, smash mode now. Everyone else, flanking formation, make yourselves big and loud." To their credit, Team Delta snapped out of their shock and followed her commands. Bront, the massive megalith, activated his species' defensive posture, expanding his body plates and making himself twice his normal size. The other team members spread out, making noise and waving their arms, trying to confuse the hunter's targeting senses. It was actually working. The hunter, now partially blinded and facing multiple targets, hesitated. Kira did not. She kept moving, kept firing, always staying just out of reach while landing shots on the hunter's remaining good eye, its nose, anywhere that might be sensitive. "She is herding it," I realized aloud. "She is driving it away from her team." "That is impossible," Velmoth said. "You cannot herd a Raxian hunter. They are apex predators. They do not retreat." Apparently nobody told her that. We watched as Kira systematically drove the hunter backward, using aggressive fire and movement to make herself the primary threat. Every time it tried to turn back toward the other students, she would hit it with another shot, forcing its attention back to her. Then she did something that made absolutely no sense from a survival perspective. She ran into the forest, and the hunter followed. "She is leading it away," I said, already moving toward the door. "We need to get rescue teams in there immediately." "Already deploying," Velmoth confirmed. "But what about the other 2 hunters?" "Good question." I pulled up the tactical display again, and felt my stomach drop. The other 2 hunters had found Team Epsilon, Marcus's team. And unlike Kira's situation, this was not going well. Team Epsilon had tried to fight. Vex's shell was down, her leg clearly broken. 2 others were unconscious. The rest were scattered, trying to evade 2 hunters who were systematically running them down. Marcus was making a stand in front of his injured teammates, firing his training rifle uselessly at the approaching hunters. Brave, yes. Effective, not even slightly. "We need heavy response teams there now," I ordered. "They are still 10 minutes out," Velmoth replied. 10 minutes. Those students did not have 10 minutes. Then something extraordinary happened. Kira emerged from the forest behind the 2 hunters. She was bleeding from a dozen cuts, her armor was shredded, and she was somehow riding on the back of the hunter she had been fighting. No, not riding. Steering. She had jammed her shock batons into the sides of the hunter's head like reins, using electrical pulses to force it to move where she wanted. And she was driving it straight toward the other two hunters. "This is insane," Villamoth whispered. "This is humanity," I replied. The hunter Kira was riding slammed into the other two at full speed, all three creatures going down in a tangle of claws and fury. In the chaos, Kira jumped clear, rolled to her feet, and sprinted toward Marcus. "Time to go," she yelled, grabbing him by the arm. "My team," he protested, already being extracted. "Look up." Sure enough, medical shuttles were descending, the noise and light finally driving the hunters back. Rescue teams in full combat armor were dropping down, establishing a perimeter. Kira dragged Marcus to the nearest shuttle, shoving him inside before collapsing herself. From my position in the observation tower, I finally allowed myself to breathe. "Get medical teams to both extraction points," I ordered. "Full trauma protocols. And somebody please tell me we have contained those hunters." "Containment teams are moving in now," Villamoth confirmed. "All three hunters are being sedated and returned to secure holding." I sank into a chair, my limbs suddenly feeling like they were made of liquid. In the medical bay an hour later, I found both Marcus and Kira being treated for various injuries. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully, but enough to keep them overnight for observation. Marcus saw me approaching and tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. "Professor, I need to apologize. If I had been better prepared. If I had not frozen when—" "Stop," I interrupted. "You did exactly what any reasonable person would do when confronted with an apex predator. You tried to protect your team, even knowing you could not win. That took courage." He shook his head. "Not as much as her." He nodded toward the bed across from him, where Kira was arguing with a medical drone about whether she needed additional stitches. I walked over to her bed. "Kira Vasquez, we need to talk." She looked up at me, and I saw something in her eyes that confirmed my suspicions. This was not a student who had gotten lucky. This was a trained soldier who had done this kind of thing before. "Let me guess," she said tiredly. "You want to know where I learned to fight like that? Among other things, yes." She sighed, glancing at Marcus before looking back at me. "Can we do this somewhere private?" I nodded and led her to a small consultation room once the medical drone finally finished its work. Marcus watched us go with obvious curiosity, but I signaled him to stay put. In the consultation room, Kira sat down heavily in a chair. "How much do you actually want to know, Professor?" "The truth would be a pleasant change," I replied. She was quiet for a long moment. "My file is sparse because most of my background is classified. I was not supposed to even be here, but Earth's military thought having someone on the inside of Coalition Academy would be useful for intelligence gathering." "You are a spy." "Worse. I am Special Operations. Earth's first contact war with the Zelthian Confederacy 5 years ago. I was there. Outpost defense at Kepler Station. I was there. The Manila siege. I led the counterattack." I sat down slowly, processing this information. "You are a combat veteran. 15 years active service, 83 confirmed operations, more kills than I care to remember." She looked at her hands. "I was not supposed to engage today. I was supposed to observe, gather intelligence, stay in character. But when that hunter attacked, you reverted to your training," I finished. "Instinct is hard to override, Professor. See threat, eliminate threat, protect the people around you." She looked up at me. "Are you going to report this?" I should have said yes immediately. Espionage is a serious violation of Academy protocols. She should have been expelled, possibly even imprisoned. But I thought about those students she had saved. I thought about how she had led a Raxian Hunter away from her team, knowing it might kill her. I thought about how she had turned an impossible situation into a rescue operation. "Your secret is safe," I said finally. "But I have a question. Why did you really come here?" She smiled sadly. "Because somebody needs to make sure humanity does not get eaten alive by the galaxy. We are new to this, Professor. We do not know all the dangers out there. I am here to learn what threatens us so I can teach others how to survive it. And Marcus is a good kid who needs to learn that bravery without preparation just gets you killed. Today was a harsh lesson, but hopefully one that keeps him alive in the future. I stood to leave, then paused at the door. Kira Vasquez, one more question. That technique you used, controlling the hunter with electrical impulses, that is not standard human military doctrine, is it? Her smile widened slightly. No, sir. That was improvisation. We are very good at that. I am beginning to understand that. As I left, I reflected on what had happened. Humanity had been part of the coalition for less than 4 cycles, yet they had already proven themselves to be adaptable, resilient and absolutely terrifying when protecting their own. The galaxy was not ready for humans. But humans were definitely ready for the galaxy. And that, I realized, changed everything. The next morning I found Marcus waiting outside my office. His injuries had been treated, and he looked significantly more humble than the cocky student who had challenged Kira 3 days earlier. Professor, can we talk? I gestured him inside. What is on your mind, Marcus Webb? I owe Kira an apology, a real one, not just for the fight, but for underestimating her, for underestimating what humans can be. Have you told her this? Not yet. I wanted to ask your advice first. I considered this carefully. Marcus, let me tell you something about humans that I have learned recently. Your species has a saying, yes, about walking a mile in someone's shoes before judging them. He nodded. Perhaps you should try that. Learn about Kira's experiences, understand why she reacted the way she did during the games. I suspect you will find that you have much to learn from her. I think you are right, he said quietly. Thank you, Professor. After he left, I sat at my desk and began writing my report on the incident. But I knew that no matter what words I chose, I could not truly capture what I had witnessed. Humanity was not the strongest species in the coalition. They were not the fastest or the smartest or the most technologically advanced. But they had something that many other species had lost over millennia of civilization. They had the willingness to charge directly at danger when someone needed protecting. They had the creativity to turn predators into weapons. They had the raw, stubborn refusal to accept defeat. In short, they had that terrifying combination of courage and ingenuity that turned prey species into apex predators. 3 days after that, the Academy released the official findings on the containment breach. Security protocols were updated, additional safeguards were implemented, and students were given trauma counseling. But the real changes were more subtle. I noticed other species students watching human students differently now, with a mix of respect and awareness. Instructors began including human tactical innovations in their lesson plans. Recruitment officers from various coalition militaries started paying much closer attention to graduating human students. And in my classroom, when I taught about asymmetric warfare, I had a new example to use. Today a human student took on an apex predator with training equipment and won through sheer audacity and tactical brilliance. As for Marcus and Kira, I am pleased to report they became friends. Good friends, actually. She taught him how to fight properly. He taught her how to relax and enjoy the academy experience instead of treating everything like a military operation. They both graduated with honors 2 cycles later and were immediately recruited into Coalition Special Operations, where I hear they are making quite the reputation for themselves. But that, as they say, is another story entirely. For now, I simply continue teaching, training the next generation of coalition warriors. And whenever a student gets too confident, too certain of their superiority, I tell them this story. The story of the day a human picked a fight in my class, and another human ended it without mercy. The story of the day we learned that humanity might be young and inexperienced, but they are absolutely not to be underestimated. The story of the day the galaxy realized that humans do not survive by being the strongest or the fastest. They survive by being the ones who refuse to quit, no matter the odds. And in a galaxy full of threats and dangers, that quality might just be humanity's greatest weapon. Class dismissed.